Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for this evening's event. We're welcoming Sheila Pree Bright. She'll be introduced by Anita Allen, who's on the faculty here at TCNJ. This talk is part of the Be Here Now exhibition and public events series, which was organized by Belinda Hicks and me. I'm Margaret Pizzala-Granlund. I'm the director of the gallery here at the College of New Jersey. And thank you all for coming. I'm going to turn it over to Anita for a more formal introduction.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for attending. And thank you, Belinda and Margaret, for such a compelling curatorial program that you've put together. It's incredibly exciting. And in that excitement, I am so honored that we're able to host and speak with and hear about Sheila Pree Bright's work. She has quite a vast amount of achievements. Her work has been exhibited at the High Museum of Art in Atlanta, the Smithsonian National Museum of African American Museum in Washington, D.C., the Museum of Contemporary Art, Cleveland, Turner Contemporary, Margate, Kent, England, the Art Gallery at Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and the Leica Gallery in New York. Her work is included in numerous private and public collections. To name a few: Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, and the Nerman Museum of Contemporary Art, the National Center for Civil and Human Rights, the High Museum of Art, the Museum of Contemporary Art, and the Library of Congress. Such high achievements. Notably, her work is also featured in an exhibition and book called Posing Beauty in African American Culture, curated by the one and only Deborah Willis. And Bright's photographs appeared in the 2014 feature-length documentary, Through the Lens Darkly, Black Photographers and the Emergence of a People. Her current work includes commissions, Rebirth, an installation commissioned by Boston University, and Picturing the South, a series that was commissioned by the High Museum in Atlanta. And thank you so much, Sheila, for being here.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank TCNJ for the invite, and it's kind of sad we can't see the show physically, but I'm really excited about being in the show and doing the talk for tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, desktop. Okay, let me get out of here. Hold on, this is so different. The audience, I can't really see you, but welcome to my home. And I'm gonna start off talking about me as an artist, using the medium as photography, and how I actually started in photography. My younger years, I was brought up in Germany up until the age of 6 years old. I was very introverted. I was very shy, and I was a lover of books. I would always stay in the house. And when I'm going to talk about my college years, but when I began to go to college, in my last year in college, I decided to take a photography course because that me being young, when I was younger, shy and introverted, I was still the same while I was in school. I didn't really hang out a lot. I had friends, but they were like, you know, you won't come out, you won't do anything. So I took a photography course, and that really opened me up to really speak. And so I always tell people the photography found me, and it allowed me to speak. And the first image that you see is an image that I shot this year in 2020. And I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. I was over in one of the communities, and I was so amazed of this mural because it had the little crown on it, and it said Lonnie's Hood. And that crown is that symbolic of Basquiat's artwork. And so I immediately got out of the car and started talking to individuals in the neighborhood. And keep in mind, I'm not from the neighborhood. And I wanted to know who Lonnie was. And so basically they told me that Lonnie was a good man and that he really helped the community. But how he helped the communities, that he drugs into the community, but he helped the community. And that reminded of me when I first started in photography. When I left college, I moved to Houston, Texas, and roundabout in the mid to late 90s, I decided that I wanted to know what was going on in the neighborhoods, and I wanted to photograph rappers because at that time it was called, in the hip hop culture, it was called gangster rap. And I felt that, not at the time though, just reflecting back, I felt that from the civil rights movement to the Black Power movement, I feel that the movement that came next was hip hop culture, because they were talking about what was going on in the community, police brutality, death. And gangster rap is the one, like, you know, Scar. I don't know if you guys, some of the students probably too young to know these groups. Pretty sure you know Ice Cube. You know, he's in the media right now with what he's trying to do. Ice Cube, Scarface. So I did not really know a lot about photography, but I used to go into the neighborhoods and hang out and started photographing. And I said, I want to photograph rappers because I want to know what's going on. And so one of my first images as I shot that you see here is J Rock, aggravated J Rock. That was his name. And I went over to the house because I was asking the person that was managing them. I said, why do I have to come over to the house? He says, come over to the house. When I got there, there was a large group of young Black males. And in my curiosity, I went into the house, and I'm gonna go through some of these images, but I really want to talk about this first. Went to the house, I was like, I was very naive, young, naive. I asked them why were they in the house? What are they doing? And then immediately I saw J Rock. That's the one that's in the white. They call those Dickies back. I guess they still call them in the day. And he had just got out of jail for something that he did not do. And so this was an album cover, believe it or not. They came out with their guns, and I'm looking at them like, are those real? And they looked at me and they said, where you come from? You like a white girl in a Black body. And so that was my entry into the hip hop culture. And I was known as the person to photograph them. And this image right here is Class C. I photographed him, and back then it was film, it wasn't digital. I had a negative, not negative, film, and that was my last roll on the film, and I didn't know what to do. And I told Class C, I said, why don't you point the gun at me? He said, you want me to point this gun at you? I said, point the gun at me. And he took that gun and he went like that. And that was my last shot of him. This is the entry of me moving into the art world. Keep in mind, I didn't go to school for the arts. I majored in textile design. I I have a friend, I had a friend that was an artist, and when he saw the portraits that I was doing, he was saying that you need to be in a show, and I'm bringing a curator over here to look at your work. And I'm like, okay. And this image right here is Scarface. He's known for the Ghetto Boys, Scarface and the Ghetto Boys, and his CD called The Diary. And so, and this is Ice Cube with Scarface. I was photographing a set on, I forgot the name of the video right now. It'll probably come back to me. But what I wanted to explain to you is about my entry into the art world. So when the curator came and he saw the work, he looked at me, he looked at the work. He says, I thought you was going to have some cute fashion images. He said, did you do this work? I said, yes, I did. So I was in the show with 3 other women that had received their MFAs, and how I presented this work, and these are the portraits of these hip hop artists. I went into the store and got shoe boxes, basketball shoe boxes, and I spray painted them all black on the inside and outside, and I placed the images in the box. And at the time, my thinking was, because I want people to really look at the images, so they're small and very intimate. And the curator called me on the evening of the show, and he said, Sheila, where are you? He says, you need to get down here. And I said, I'm not coming down there, because keep in mind, I told you earlier, I was shy. I'm shy. And I said, a photograph speaks for itself. Why do I need to come down there and talk about that? He said, Sheila, can you please come? So I came. And when I entered the door, there was people at the door wanted to talk to me. And I was very, very nervous about it. And one thing that they wanted to ask me with the image I show you with Class C is, did you ask him, did he have a bullet in the gun? And I said, no, I did not ask. I just wanted to get the shot. So that was my entry into the art world. And immediately, about maybe 6 months later, I left Texas, heading to go to California, but end up in Atlanta because my aunt had passed. And that's how my career really started in the art world, is coming to Atlanta. My father, he saw a lot of the photographing that I was doing, and he was saying that you need to go to school. So he put me through grad school, and that's where I received my MFA in photography. So when I got to grad school, I didn't know this at the time, but the way I see and I shoot, I was always creating narratives about social, political, and historical context that was not often seen in visual culture. And it's like even in the media or propaganda-based platforms. So the imagery I present and I capture of culture, and sometimes counterculture, challenge these ideas about narratives that are controlled by Western thought. So when I was in school, I'm so glad that I went to school to receive my MFA, because it opened up a whole another world for me. I really didn't understand at the time about how Black bodies were looked upon. The images that I showed you in the hip hop culture, a lot of times, I'm thinking, oh, I'm young, these are cool images. But when other cultures see this imagery, they think of the Black male, of those stereotypes, the challenges of thug and all of that. And I did not realize that what I was putting out, that is some of the imagery that other people saw beyond those images as a hip hop artist. So in school, I started doing a lot of research, and I started thinking about stories that challenged the perceptions when it came to Black bodies. And I immediately started thinking about coming to the South was so different from me. My parents are from the South, but I was not raised in the South. And my hair is natural. And this was back in 2000, and you would think that my natural hair, that people will accept that. And up until now in 2020, we have seen lots of stories about Blacks of going to school or companies wanting to wear their natural hair, which this is their natural hair. And so I started thinking about Black women and how did they think, how did they feel about their bodies? And I started researching the Barbie doll because she is a very iconic image in Western culture, and everybody, people of color and every woman, mostly every woman, have played with that Barbie doll. And I feel that the Barbie doll has a sense of causing one to assimilate. I mean, this image right here is one of the original Barbie dolls, the hair, the blue eyes, and part of those eyes come from the Gichi woman in China, but she represent the idea, what you call ideal body. So what I started doing was bringing women into my studio and photographing them and start morphing the Barbie dolls with the women. And I'm basically talking about blurring the lines between reality and non-reality. And I'm gonna just go through these images real fast. And you see this image right here of a Barbie doll, and it's stamped 1999 Indonesia, and she's wearing dreads. And this is all, this work was actually my thesis. A lot of people were very surprised about this, but this was my thesis coming out of grad school. And once I graduated, I started thinking about the Black communities besides the communities that are in urban and marginalized communities of Blacks, because a lot of that imagery is being projected in the media. So I turned my camera towards suburbia, because at that time in 2005, I think, yeah, 2005, 2004, in the art world, a lot of photographers were talking about suburbia, but I didn't see imagery of African Americans. So I wanted to talk about the invisibility of African Americans in suburbia. And I called this work Suburbia. And this work right here is the work that made me national. I won my first award. Back then it was called the Santa Fe Prize Award. Now it's called Center. And I had to speak before like publishers, curators, 300 people. And I was so nervous behind that, because before I had to do my speech, I had to let curators, photo editors, art consultants look at my work and actually critique it. And by surprise, we live in the 21st century. I was told from 90% of them told me that I did not have enough signifiers in the work to show that these were Black homes. And you obviously see a woman laying in her bed reading Business Week, the future of technology. And I was told, oh, I see books, I don't see TV. So it really startled me, because I was also told that, why didn't you call it Black suburbia? And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because a lot of times when it comes to African-American artists, we're being told, why are you always talking about identity? Why are you always talking about Blackness? This body of work, that's what I was challenging to do. What I wanted to do was to show universal commonality amongst all people. That was one of the reasons why I did not call it Black suburbia, African American suburbia. I want to show you the common thread that runs through all of us. But I was totally surprised about the comments that I was getting from this work. And it showed me how, even though I'm Black, those perceptions of me is projected on me when I really wanted to talk about suburbia. And these people happen to be Black. And this is another image right here. I'm gonna just go through these. And from there, my mind is always processing of what I see in popular culture. And it seems like a lot of times people are saying all of your work look different. Visually, it may look different, but it has there's a common thread that runs through this work that's the same. And right after when I won the award for Suburbia, I started thinking about the millenniums, Generation Y, because this is the generation that is the biggest generation since in history. They're bigger than the baby boomers. My parents are from the silent generation and the Generation X, and it's more diverse generation. And at roundabout in 2007, uh, President Obama, he wasn't president at the time, was thinking about running for office. And I wanted to know what the millenniums thought about America. And because when you think about me, I'm an adult now, when the young people, when we're young, we're very, we can't, nobody can tell the young people anything. People are always looking at young people like they don't know what they're talking about. And especially this generation, the only thing that they're really interested in is technology and body branding and all of that. And I'm like, I beg to differ from that. I do believe that they have an interest in America and what's going on. So I decided to get a flag, and I started asking a couple of people that I knew. I said, I'm doing a new body of work and I want you to come into the studio and I want you to tell me, what do you think about, what does America mean to you in the 21st century? And I gave them and I handed them the flag and they did whatever they wanted to do with it. And this is Colin. And I traveled across the most of the country with this body of work because I received a major grant from the Aetna Foundation to do this body of work. I actually, in all of my work, I always start with my work, and then people, it's always happened this to me. Curators come to me, it's like, oh, I need to help you. But this is Colin, and I was in Winston, South Carolina, very, very quiet. He reminded me a lot of me, did not say much. And all I do, I am the observer. I don't tell anybody what to do. Because the flag means things different for each individual. And Colin folded that flag up, you see it in a square, and laid it nicely down and put his hands in his pocket and looked away. That was my first image. And I knew then that's what it was. I'm not going to explain all of this because I don't know how much time I have. So I had my first solo show in 2003 with this body of work. And this is Jenny. She is from China, and I photographed her in California. She talked about how she felt in America, how she didn't feel like she belonged. And she said that she came over to this country at the age of 6, and she wondered if she never would have come, what would her life would have been like? And I think that you could pick that up. She's kind of divided with this image. And these, like I said, these are the ones that I thought this was very interesting, how this individual wore a shirt that says, "Get out of my space." And keep in mind, this work was all done in between 2006 through 2008. And it's so relevant right now. It is so relevant right now. And this is Nicole, and she talked about the birth of a nation. And so with this body of work, it's called Young Americans, but I received a commission from the Boston University, and they wanted me to create work around the election now in 2020. And I received the commission earlier on, and the pandemic happened. And so I was supposed to be in Boston for like 2 months and I couldn't come down. And I was like, as an artist now, I had to challenge myself as how I'm going to produce this work. And I started thinking about my young Americans. I started thinking about the 2020 State of the Union address about, I believe it's Make America Great Again. And I really started thinking about the young people that I photographed, these sitters, and what they were talking about then is so relevant now. And with the university, this is a still image, but what I produced for the university library at Muger Library, Memorial Library in Boston, I appropriated the images of my Young American series. And I was thinking about women because I got the idea from Nicole about rebirth. I feel that there's more women than ever that's running for office. You have mothers whose children have died from police brutality that are running for city council, running for Congress. And I feel that women are the gatekeepers that are really young women and women period are the keepers that are really going to push this country forward. And so I printed these images up on aluminum about 30 by 40. And I love to collaborate. I collaborate with the BU students through virtual. We did a lot of lecture, did a lot of talking. We talked about America, the elections. And so I took their quotes that they were saying and I made a movie. These images of the text is moving and there's an image, I don't know if you could see it, that's in the background, and they're projected onto the aluminum. And this was my piece, and I called it The Rebirth. George Floyd brought us together. And with young Americans have really, I feel that my work is part of activism. You know, I've never thought about it that way, but it really is. And so my first show was in the museum, but in 2012, a guerrilla street curator by the name of Keith, she's in Boston right now. I have to tell you about that a little bit later, but she told me that I needed to take my work out to the streets because my work speaks to the masses of the people. And this image that you see before you is at a historical building that was closed. And it was in Atlanta, and these about like 30 feet high, the images, and we paste these images on the wall, and it's not like we're haphazardly putting images just up on walls. We're actually really curating the area, and this historical building is referencing Martin Luther King and the civil rights leaders who went to school at this school. It was called the David T. Howard School. So it shows you how, as an artist in my work, how it moves in and out in different layerings of a museum. Now it's at the BU Library in 2020, and this work was done in 2012. Now I want to talk to you about my father. My father is very affluent in my life. Really, it was my father. My mother too, but it was really my father. He's a Vietnam vet. He served his country, and he is the one that would always nurture me in buying me books. He kept all of our siblings in museums, and he really wanted us to know about different cultures. And we traveled like every 2 to 3 years. And my father and my mother grew up in a little town called Waycross, Georgia. It's 4 hours away from Atlanta. And they were 18, 19 years old. If I have students, you know, it's hard to look through a screen, but they were 18, 19 years old your age, and they have to endure the trauma of Jim Crow era, of the white signs and the black signs. And this image that you see before you is women, children, aunts, and mothers who are coming from the Fort Baptist, what is the church in Alabama where the 4 little girls were bombed and they were killed. And this is the generational trauma that Black bodies have to endure in this country. And it seemed like it's nonstop. So when the death of Trayvon came about, I really started thinking about young people again. And I said, you know what? It's really going to take young people to really change this country. And so I started reaching out to some of the unknown civil rights leaders that live in Atlanta because I wanted to know who they were. Because I always say this, we know about Martin Luther King, John Lewis, but we don't know about the others that were in the movement, because it just don't take leaders, it takes all of us. It's like an orchestra where everybody is playing these different parts. So I created, at the time, I did not know this was going to be a series, 1960 Now, but these are some of, I started going to my studio with the elders and started photographing portraits of them. And this is Dr. Rosalind Polk, who authored the Pill of Human Rights. She went to school at Spelman, the Black colleges here in Atlanta, and she was 20 years old when she authored the Appeal for Human Rights. And this is Mr. Lonnie King, who started the Atlanta student movement, where they did the sit-ins here in Atlanta. And I'm telling you, I learned so much about the movement versus the narratives that I have read in school. It was through the lens of these civil rights leaders versus what we see in the books, because some of that stuff is lack of better words, whitewash. In this image, so I started photographing the elders first, and then I started thinking about the young, I call them young visionaries. And this is Bree Newsom, who took down the Confederate flag. And this is Miko. He actually is from the LGBTQ community, and that's the community that was the driving force with Black Lives Matter. And I'm gonna go through this real quick. And so when I was taking these portraits, moving from generational, from the elders to the young people, I felt that I needed to go to the ground to find out what was going on in the communities, because like I explained to you earlier about my process of how we're seeing projected images from the media and how it's being used as propaganda, where it's showing you the stereotype and all of that. And so I started photographing in Atlanta, and this image that you see, reclaim Martin Luther King, it was 2015, Emiko called me and said, Sheila, we're getting ready to shut down Martin Luther King Parade. I said, you guys are going to shut down Martin Luther? They said, yes, we are. And they shut it down, and people were very, very upset. If you could have been there, you see the individuals with their children along the line with the marches, and they shut it down. And the elders were really mad and told them that if Martin Luther King was here, he would have not liked what they've been doing. They said, yes, he will, because he was about resilience, and that's resistance. That's why they had the hashtag Reclaim Martin Luther King Day, because they are tired of the commercialization of Martin Luther King. I have a dream. He was more than a dream. He was about resistance, about keeping on the fight, because when he was living, he was not liked, and that's how he was murdered. So I'm gonna go through these images pretty fast, because I started in Atlanta. I went to Ferguson. This image right here is Ferguson, to Baton Rouge to DC and Baltimore. I was in Baltimore. I was there that Sunday when Freddie Gray had passed in the hospital, and I went straight into the communities and started documenting. And I'm gonna just go through this. So yeah, John Lewis, Black Trans Lives Matter. And when I'm out photographing the protests, I am not just, I always say this, clicking on the shutter of my camera to try to get a shot. I'm actually waiting for moments. I'm actually purposely shot in black and white. And that's why the work is called 1960 Now. And I purposely shot square. And with a lot of this work, I look at this work as portraiture versus them protest images. You see an image of a Black male and tears is running down his eyes. You may not see that too much on the screen. This is Janelle Monáe out protesting in Atlanta with her song Say Her Name. And this young lady, we were out till like 12 o'clock midnight, and this actually was in Atlanta too. And what compelled me to take this photograph of her, and I saw the hurt, I saw the pain, and she was holding up a liberation flag while standing on an American flag. But I chose not to photograph that because what drew me into her was her facial expression. And of course, the journalist photographed from the liberation to the American flag. Because when I was on, well, I'm still on the ground, I see, I feel the pain. I see the fear. It's just a lot of going on. There's a lot to trauma. There's a lot of mental illness too. And I think a lot of times when we're seeing these images that come across our tablets or the TV, we're not really understanding the full scope of what's going on in these communities. We see we love our people, and we will be here until justice is served. This is Ferguson. So now when 2020 came, 2020 vision, George Floyd happened. And when I experienced that on TV, because I saw it on TV, I cried. And I cried because I've been documenting since 2013. This has been happening to Black bodies since the beginning, since my ancestors has been brought over here. And can you imagine their trauma? Can you imagine John Lewis' trauma? But when I saw George Floyd, and when he cried out and said, "Mama," I cried. And I feel that globally, so people use George Floyd as a symbol of change. And I feel that this is a start, because I don't think, and I'm not sure, I'm just saying this is from me, is that George Floyd ignited protests in 50 states and in 12 countries globally. So, and I personally did not want to go out and photograph any more protest images, because I felt like, okay, I have authored a book about 1960 Now, about the death of Black bodies, death of Black bodies. I've traveled nationally, internationally, talking about this body of work. And I'm saying to myself, do our society really want change? Because what they're manifesting and what they're not doing is not, for me, it's about change. So I was really discouraged as an artist. And I said, I am not going to go out and photograph because I'm tired. I'm tired. I didn't realize how traumatized I was. But however, a little voice said, "Sheila, you got to go." And so I didn't go the first day that all of this happened that Friday with George Floyd, but I went the second day. I called the mothers from Atlanta whose children had fallen from police brutality, and they talked to me about, they were given a press conference at the state capitol with state representative, because they were trying to, I can't think of the bill right now, work on this bill. And this image that you see before you are the mothers and the Congress people. And this image right here, these are all recent images that I have been shooting. And this is Ray Shard in Atlanta that was shot at the Wendy's station here in Atlanta. And what I try to do is to try to find, not just photographing the protests and their marching. This image that you see before you are Black males that decided that they wanted to do something. So they lived in suburbia. They says that we want to suit up and we want to march from the historical Ebenezer Baptist Church to Martin Luther King's birthplace. And I thought, even though the media or somebody, they may not be interested, I think this is so powerful because we don't see this. We always see the other. And this is an image that I shot in Atlanta too. This is one of the Congresswomen, Stop Killing Us. So what I look for is something, a layering of the protest, just not the protest. I'm just trying to show you a different way, even though that these are protest images. And my last shoot so far was about 3 weeks ago when the verdict came for Breonna, a Black woman. It's like, we must protect Black women. And I went out in Atlanta and I felt it was so emotional because the women, they cried because they really had hope that something was gonna happen. And Breonna is a woman and she's a Black woman and nothing was done. Black women matter. And so when John Lewis passed in Atlanta, you know, this is his home, I went to the memorial and I photographed that. And that's gonna lead you into the last part of my talk. It won't be long. I've been thinking a lot about what we call change, about racism, about all of that. And in 2019, well, last year in December, I received a call from a photo editor from the Washington Post, and they commissioned out 10 photographers to do a photo essay and wanted to talk about, they wanted us to talk about racism. And you know, at that time, I was just so exhausted. I'm like, how much more can I do to visually to talk about this work? And so I chose not to photograph protest images, but I don't live too far from Stone Mountain Park. I don't know if anybody knows about the history of Stone Mountain Park. It is one of the largest granites in the country. And in the second coming of the KKK, they went up to Stone Mountain in 1915 and burned a flag and read chapters Roman 112, and that was the second coming of the KKK at Stone Mountain. And so the mountain is very beautiful. It's it's 4 million people that come to the park every year. They have, they still fly the Confederate flag. They have 3 Confederate generals, 3 Confederate carved in stone. And I'll show you that in a minute. But these are some of the images that I photographed. And this is actually my father's Bible. And I swear to you, when I laid that Bible down, picked up my camera, the page moved to chapter 12, and where the second coming of the KKK was reading that out of their chapter. And this is the granite and the stone. This is the Confederate flag. And they have slave homes there too. And I thought this was very interesting to see a cotton buds sitting on a table of the slaves. And I thought about my ancestors back then with cotton and would they allow them to have that in their slave homes. Now, this is the carving of the three generals, and I don't remember their names, but this mountain is, like I said, is very beautiful. And if you could see it, I don't know, to your very left, there's a trolley where you can, instead of walking the mountain, you can take a trolley up and they give you the history about it. But they really don't talk about the Confederacy, because this memorial was made with the daughters of the Confederates that wanted to keep that alive. And I wanted to talk about, through these landscapes, where the root of racism come from. I want to, because these images are like life size. I want you to walk into them. I want you to feel them, and they're beautiful, but to realize that this is the root of the racism, because by the end of 1930, there was over either 3 million or 4 million members of the KKK. And it was not only in the South, it was in the North and the South. And this is, I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna be done. Also in 2018, I was approached by an art organization in Atlanta, and they wanted to commission out artists to work on the legacy of Atlanta and the civil rights movement, because, you know, Atlanta is known for the civil rights movement. And I didn't know at the time the organization was actually working with the NFL. And for me, if I would have known that in the beginning, I actually would not have worked with the NFL, because at that time, remember the issue of Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, and I didn't want to be any part of it. And I was asked to come to the press conference, and that's when I found out about everything. The mayor was there, the NFL commission, the host committee for the NFL was there, and the art organization. And in my mind, I was like, oh my God, they didn't bamboozle me. What I'm gonna do? I'm not gonna do anything. I was so mad. And so I had to go home and really think about it. And a lot of people called me because they saw me on TV, and they said, Sheila, you need to do this, because we know that you're probably gonna do a protest within a protest with this. So I decided to do it. And the image that you see right now is a beautiful portrait image of Richard Avedon. I don't know if everybody should know Richard Avedon, white male in the 20th century, very well known, and he's known for his portraiture. But he came to Atlanta in 1963 to photograph the leaders of the civil rights movement. And this is Julian Bond holding his 9-month-old daughter, along with the SNCC students who were fighting for voting rights, like what we're doing right now. And I said, oh my God, I want to recreate this image. So I decided to invite the mothers, some of the mothers from out of town that was not living in Atlanta. The woman in the middle is, oh my God, can't think. I Can't Breathe. This is the mother. I can't think of his name. Alton, is it not Alton Sterling? I got it wrong. Eric Gardner. And then the woman to your left at the very end is Tamir Rice's mother from Cleveland. And the woman in the back with the kind of like the abstraction little coat dress that she has on, that's Oscar Grant's mother. And the rest of the mothers are from Atlanta, whose children have fallen for police brutality. I rented out an Airbnb. I brought all the mothers together, and I learned so much from them. I didn't know there was trauma within trauma within trauma with them and the mothers. And I give you one example. Some of the mothers, not these mothers, but I was told that some mothers are very upset with the other mothers because some mothers are getting more attention than the other mothers. And I was like, do you see the trauma in that? And the woman that's the eldest that's in there is Miss Dr. Rosalind Pope, that authored the Appeal for Human Rights. I invited her to come. We cried, we laughed. I hired a cook, and it was like, that was joy for us, even within that trauma. And so this is the mural that I produced in Atlanta, Georgia, then and now. Is Julian Bond holding his 9-month-old child, which her name is Phyllis Bond. She is living, and she saw that, and she was so amazed to see her father, and he's holding her. And to the right, I don't know if it's the right or left, but it's on my right. You see the mothers, and you could see Eric Garner's mother. I'm telling you, this was, I always say the last picture. This was second to the last picture. And I knew that this was the photograph. She just automatically opened up her hands, with child and not with child. So that's who I am in conclusion as an artist. And I do feel that with my work that I could bring awareness, even if some people don't want to change, but at least bring awareness and another understanding from a perspective of a Black person, because far too long we have known of ourselves, and you've known of ourselves through the white lens narrative. And thank you.
Thank you so much. This was really wonderful. I feel like we're really so fortunate to have you come and speak with us tonight. We have a few questions. Do you have time to take some questions from students in the audience? Mm-hmm. Our first question is from Jalen. She's one of our students. And she says, first of all, thank you so much, Sheila, for showing us your work. As a young Black artist, you're truly such an inspiration for me. My question to you is, do you feel as though you have an obligation to create political art or activist art as a Black woman artist? And if so, have you ever thought about creating more work that is less representational or less focused on portraying the Black identity?
That's what I was speaking upon earlier. As a Black person, we are constantly projected on, because I feel that an artist, any artist, I don't care if they're white, Black, yellow or whatever, we're gonna talk based on our perspective and our passion, because that's what we know. But we happen to be Black and everything is political. And it's not. I mean, when I did the suburbia work that I spoke to you about earlier, I was looking at that as universal commonality. That's one reason why, if you look at the body of work, I didn't really show Black folks. And if you did see them, that was the woman that's laying in her bed, because I didn't want you to really focus on that. Okay. So I think in society, because especially in America, we're so caught up on labeling and the physical of it that we can't get past it. And the only thing that I could tell you to do what's from your heart, and you know who you are. I have the confidence of, I know who I am. If you want to call me a Black photographer, you want to call me an activist or political, so be it. But I know what I'm doing. I am talking about mankind. I'm talking about humanity. And I'm happen to be Black, because when a white person is talking about suburbia, do they say, oh, the work is political, or is it the white folks? No, they do not. So don't get caught up on the labeling. Do your work, because I personally, okay, if you look at my Barbie dolls and Barbie dolls from the suburbia, even from the Young Americans, and maybe I'm so naive now too, I never really looked at my work as being political. I looked at my work about humanity and who we are in society. And we just caught up on labels. Just do your work. And I think that you will come to understand who you are and who society is, because I have come to realization. We just had another shooting of a Black male. He was mentally challenged, but he was 12 feet away and he was still shot. I believe that racism is always going to be here, but how are we going to progress from that? Because it's always going to be here. And for me as an artist, that's what I'm challenging right now, because with the commission that I'm doing with Picturing the South at the High, I'm going to talk about the landscape, but I'm going to talk about it differently from the Stone Mountain images that you saw. I want to talk more about the liberation part, okay? Because we're all in this sunken hole where all that's what's going on with the election, with BLM, and everything is becoming like a blur. We're becoming numb to it. We have the pandemic. And I, as an artist, is challenging to talk about liberation. And I'm talking about the humanity of it. So if somebody want to say it's Black, you're fine. But I know who I am and the confidence of what I'm trying to do.
Great, thank you. We have one more question from an anonymous attendee who asks, do people sometimes tell you what to photograph, or is all your work from your own ideas? Also, are there things that you feel uncomfortable photographing or things that you want to try but have not?
I've always photographed what I've always wanted to photograph. I'm not saying that I'm not being censored. Some things I have been censored on, but I photograph what I want to photograph because my father, I go back to my father, that has very strong personality. When he was growing up in the Jim Crow era, that's how he got in the service, because he spoke his mind. And me being his daughter, and I'll never forget when I was a child in Germany, he always told me to speak the truth, because when one door closed, another one will open. And that's what I've always done as in my career as an artist. I move in and out of these situations where I'm able to do street art, showing galleries. A lot of companies are looking at me to do a lot of consultant with me right now. And the other question, I believe, was, am I uncomfortable for shooting anything? No, I'm not. But I'm not. I mean, I could tell you, recently, maybe it was a month ago, and I wasn't planning on shooting. I live in Stone Mountain. I was trying to go to the health food store, and the roads were blocked off, and it was Stone Mountain Village. And what it was a rally. I didn't know anything about it. You had the Antifa out there, you had the white nationalists out there, you had the 3%ers out there, and you had all different diversities of people, mostly Black. I'm telling you, 90% of them had AKA 47s. I get out of my car, and the Antifa people, it was a young man, white nationalist, 3%ers, they were all screaming and yelling at each other. I went over there and I told them, I started yelling at them. I said, all you guys are doing is yelling at each other. You're not listening to each other. I started talking to them. I didn't have any fear or afraid in my heart. I don't know where I think I get that from my father. But to your answer, no, I don't have a problem of photographing anything at all. I know you have to be careful out there though, but yes. I think the hip hop culture of shooting gangster rap and me being around that culture really is, I'm doing a 360 degrees. It really toughened me up to deal with what I'm dealing with now.
Great, thank you. I had one question also. like I'm really amazed to see like the images that we see on the screen now of your photographs just blown up huge, like building size.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about what the experience of seeing those photographs must be for the people who live there, because they really become part of your environment and part of your life that you see every day. And I'm wondering, like, what do you hope the people in that neighborhood or see those photographs every day? What do you hope they take away from them? What do you hope they remember from your images?
This particular, it's not wheat paste. This is actually put up with vinyl, and they're about 30 feet high. Keith and I curated this, and we purposely put it in this area, and the community is city council is right around the corner. The courthouse is right around the corner. The police station is, the jail is right around the corner. So you have these officials, these politicians, everybody that's coming to this parking lot looking at these imagery. And they, of course, they know who Julian Bond is, but they might not necessarily know who the women are. But I believe that everybody knows who the women are. And for me, what I hope is that within all of my work, because a lot of times as an adults, we come from different ideologies and we see things totally different. But with all of my work, I hope that it will help young people to understand even better, because I think sometimes younger people have more of an open mind. And I believe that Generation Z is going to be the driving force behind it, because I don't think in society we have any empathy anymore. It's all about me, and we're not listening to each other. So I hope through, because we live in a visual culture, and I hope through the work that I do and the visuals that I do will spark something in anybody. It may not be a change, but really get people to start thinking, or to create a dialogue, to start a dialogue. For example, in Boston too, I didn't speak upon this because the work is going up now. In addition to the work that I did at Boston University in the library, we're actually putting up 13 images of women in Boston, in Lynn, the county in Lynn in Boston, and it's all women. And what really inspired me, I'm going to be on IG Live with her, a young woman by the age of 18 from Puerto Rico, and she has a lot to say. We don't listen to young people, and she has galvanized all of her friends in Boston with these young women, my young American images that we're putting up of nothing but women, and they are so excited, and the adults are listening to them. I think we need to listen to the young people. We as adults forget how we were when we were young. We're smarter. I mean, young people are smarter than you think. It may not look like it, but they are.
I think that's very true. Do you have any last thoughts?
No, I just want to say thank you, and thank you for listening. And I hope that someone that I inspire, to willing to open up their minds and to listen, even if they don't change, but to listen, because we don't do a lot of that right now at all. And it's going to be interesting to see how we all going to move in the coming future and after the election, because it is a challenge. And I know it's a challenge, but we just got to keep pushing. All of us got to keep pushing. And I think that all of us need to open our minds to try to understand each other, because we really know of each other through the media. We really don't know each other at all.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. This was so generous, and we really appreciate it. And we were really happy to have you. So
thank you so much too. And thank you.